abilities so much as convincing somebody about something that is very self-evident, and persuading people to, like how step one did, just to give that first step. I mean, you take people with no cost to your organization, no hassle to your organization, and they seem to be working perfectly fine.
No.
So, yeah.
Is the discussion happening, or we just note down the recommendation?
Yeah. Just recommendation.
Recommendation.
Employer training, basically.
No, but if you have a point.
So I think these recommendations should also go to FICCI, CII, Chamber of Commerce types.
And one more thing. No, but Ratna, if you have a point related
No, I was just thinking that when we are talking about employers training, where is the point of entry? Because we are giving it to the government. So is it going to be the private limited companies, whether it's going to be the public sector enterprises? How? Do we start with SAIL, Coal India, the banks, nationalized?
Start with government and public sector, but don't leave the private sector out.
No, but that's a good idea, starting with SAIL, I think at least some of the public sector.
You see, because whatever judgments I have seen so far, they've been only public sector.
Private sector is more.
So people have, managed to get their jobs back, like the guy in the Merchant Navy, Swalin Edwards, Swalin Dakuna, whatever. He got his job back, but then those are more like, because the government can literally at the end of it crack a whip and say, okay, you have to. Private is another ball game altogether.
Yeah. No, because we are presenting these recommendations to the government, I think we should stick to public sector companies. Private sector, maybe the NGOs can then get together, like Janaki has done a lot of work towards that, Ratna is working towards that. We should decide we want to do this, because they cannot dictate terms to.
No, there's one, there's one suggestion here. It's not like, of course, the government cannot put pressure on the private companies, but since the incentive schemes and things like that.
Yeah.
So we can tie it up.
Yeah, you can tie it up for more incentives. So put that can be a point, that offer more incentives to people who hire people.
Because finally, government jobs will be limited and we have to depend on private companies. We cannot have everyone working.
Concessions to private companies.
So that is recommendation. The recommendation is not necessarily only for the government. It is going to the government. It doesn't mean it's going to have scope only as far as government activities go. Our recommendations are for everybody, anyone and everyone in India.
But it's better you tie it into somebody who can implement it.
Yeah, some you can.
Without implementation, it just stand like that.
Government will have to give concessions to the employers who are engaging persons.
Correct. So that's Ratna's point as well.
And secondly, what also she was saying, that the shops which are run and managed by persons with mental illness, there this regular laws should not apply.
So that's
inspectors which come and
those are two important points that you brought up based on your experience. So
particularly, suppose in a shop, more than 50% people with mental illness are working. Those are the shops I'm saying. Not that you see what happens. Some shops they'll employ one person and then they ask for concession. We're not talking about that. We are saying, okay, any shop where it's a departmental store or something where they employ more than 50% of the people, they should be given, or 25%. They should be the slab.
So that we
they should.
I think that's one reason why the banyan shop also.
No, we could sustain because we also didn't do a good job from our end.
But also there is government thing.
That job should go to again to the mental ill person. That also
can be transferred.
Which one? What?
No, all, so far.
So இப்போ வரைக்கும் பேசுறது என்ன அப்படின்னா இப்போ இந்த கவர்மெண்ட்ல வந்து எப்படி என்னன்னு மனு கொடுக்கறது, கவர்மெண்ட் கொடுக்கணுமா இல்ல பொதுவா எல்லாருக்கும் கொடுக்கணுமா? ஸோ வைஷ்ணவி மேடம் பொதுவா எல்லாருக்குமே கொடுக்கலாம், கவர்மெண்ட்டுக்கும் கொடுக்கலாம்னு சொன்னாங்க. பட் வந்து நான் என்ன சொன்னேன், எல்லாருமே கொடுக்கறத விட குறிப்பா யார் அதை செயல்படுத்த முடியும் அப்படின்னா கவர்மெண்ட் தான் செயல்படுத்த முடியும். அப்புறம் நேற்று அந்த ஐயா வந்திருந்தார், விஜய் குமார் ஐயா. அவர் வந்து இப்போ இந்த மாதிரி விஷயத்துக்கு ரொம்ப அகிரகண்யமா இருக்காரு. ஸோ அவர் இருக்கிற போதே நம்ம இந்த மாதிரி காரியங்கள்லாம் நல்லா சாதிச்சிடலாம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. ஸோ இதுல வந்து இப்போ ஒரு ரெக்கமெண்டேஷன் என்ன அப்படின்னா, கவர்மெண்ட் கிட்ட வந்து இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு நிறுவனம் இருக்கு, அது ஊனமா இருக்கவங்களோ இல்ல மனநல பாதிக்கப்பட்டவங்க இது பண்றாங்கன்னா அவங்களுக்கு சில சலுகை வந்து பண்ணலாம். இது வந்து கவர்மெண்ட்ல இருக்க நிறுவனத்துக்கு முக்கியமா பண்ணணும், ரெண்டாவது வந்து தனியார் நிறுவனங்களுக்கு சில சலுகை பண்ணலாம். அவங்கள நம்ம வற்புறுத்த முடியாது, பட் அவங்களுக்கு வந்து வரி ஏதாவது கட்டணம் எல்லாம் கம்மி பண்ணலாம். இப்போ இந்த ஏடிஜி அந்த மாதிரி இப்போ அவங்க நிறைய பேர் ஊனங்களை அவங்க நீங்க அவங்க சேர்க்கணும்னு சொல்ல முடியாது, பட் சேர்த்தா அவங்களுக்கு வந்து இவ்வளவு மானியம் கிடைக்கும், இந்த அளவுக்கு தள்ளுபடி இருக்கும் அப்படின்ட்டு. அதே மாதிரி அந்த நிறுவனமே வந்து ஒரு 50% மேல, அது வந்து ரத்னா சிபர் மேடம் சொல்லியிருக்காங்க, அதாவது 50% மேல வந்து ஊனமற்றவரால் நடக்கப்பட்ட ஒரு இது திட்டமா இருந்தாலோ இல்ல நிறுவனமா இருந்தா அவங்களுக்கு வந்து பொது நிறுவனங்களுக்கு இருக்கிற சட்டங்கள் திட்டங்கள்லாம் இருக்கக்கூடாது, கொஞ்சம் அவங்களுக்கு சலுகையா தனிப்பட்ட முறையில பார்க்கணும்.
Okay, people have been saying some things about special employment exchanges. I would actually move more towards an integrated employment exchange because that's more in line with inclusion. Also, if people are to actually someday fill up the quotas that the government has said for this disabled people, that disabled people, SC, ST, whatnot, whatever the breakdown is, it should be possible for us to search for those people without having to go, okay, this is an SC/ST employment exchange, that is an employment exchange for blind people, that is an employment exchange for people with mental health issues. It really makes no sense, and it only encourages more divisive and separateness as far as people with disabilities or any other problems go. If you do have an integrated, what I would envision is something like, if I'm HR in a company, I should be able to say, okay, first of all, my biggest headache is I am supposed to, under law, provide employment for this many categories of people. Otherwise, it is a statutory requirement and I will get into trouble. So, to follow the law, okay, I need this many people, this many women, this many disabled people, this many orthopedic, this many whatever, and I should be able to search for it in the same way that I search on a monster.com or a Naukri or even a consultant. I should be able to go to a Mafwa and say that, okay, look, I have a position for this many people with mental health issues, and right now the preferred vacancies are for let's say this position and that particular work. And they should be able to, without having to go to some other expert who only, kind of focuses on disabled recruitment, they should be able to immediately supply, because that levels the playing field. This should also, the way in which I envision it is, again, let's say I'm a mother and I just delivered a child, and it's going to be something like 4 years before I can get back into my job. But I can still do work from home. So if I can do work from home, I should be able to say that. Similarly, if I have a chronic disease and I'm going to be intermittently in work or out of work, that option should also be there. So then that flexi-pool kind of idea comes to play. That's it.
So just a second. Is it an extension of the second point that you mentioned, or is it a separate record?
No, an integrated employment exchange for not just mental health disability, but whatever, permutations and combinations.
But also these kind of specific needs, if she's postpartum and needs 3 years off, there should be a job specification for that also.
No, I need, let's say, this work done. I'm the employer, I need this work done. It really doesn't make too much of a difference to me whether one person does it or 3 people do it. If it more or less costs me the same, like the problem with the NREGA is you have to work for that many hours. Now suppose I can't work for 8 hours, I can work only for 4 hours. So if I find 2 people who will both work for 4 hours, then that's equivalent, my work gets done. It really doesn't make a difference.
Special allowances yesterday that was covered. So that was anyway a recommendation.
So அவங்க சொல்றது என்னன்னா, இப்போ ஒவ்வொரு திட்டம், இப்போ தலித்ஸ்கோ இல்ல வேற வேற ஊனங்களுக்கு வேற வேற கட்டடம் வேற வேற இடத்துக்கு போகணும். பார்வையற்றவங்க ஒரு இடம், உடல் ஊனம் இருக்கவங்க ஒரு இடம், மனநல இவங்களுக்கு வேற இடம், அப்போ எல்லாத்துக்கும் வேற வேற இடம் போடும்போது, அது இல்லாம சாதாரணமா இருக்கிறவங்க எங்க பெறாங்களோ அவங்களோட எம்ப்ளாய்மெண்ட் எக்ஸ்சேஞ்ச் எங்க திட்டம் செயல்படுதோ அதே இடத்துல எல்லாத்தையும் ஒருங்கிணைந்து செயல்படலாம். இது அப்போ இன்னொன்னு என்னன்னா, அதுல வந்து எல்லாரும் ஒன்னா இருக்கிற ஒரு வழி வரும். இல்லைன்னா இதுக்கு தனித்துவம், இவங்களை ஒதுக்குற மாதிரி ஆயிடும். ஒண்ணு அங்க போறது தனி பிரச்சனை, ரெண்டாவது வந்து இவங்களை தனிப்படுத்துற மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஸோ ரெண்டாவது என்ன சொன்னாங்கன்னா, சில பேருக்கு வந்து தொடர்ந்து வேலை, நீங்க கூட சொன்னீங்க அது தொடர்ந்து வேலை செய்ய முடியாது, என்னால 4 hour தான் செய்ய முடியும்னா அந்த 4 hourக்கும் ஒரு ஸ்லாட் இருக்கணும், 8 hours செஞ்சாதான் உனக்கு சம்பளம்னு இல்லாம அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு இது வேணும்.
Skill development, this is very personal, but somehow I'm pretty skeptical about it because well, again, from Banyan experience, there is really no kind of lowest common denominator when it comes to teaching a skill. You can give a person a skill and ultimately they'll go back to their hometown, and you would think that something like tailoring would be useful everywhere. But in the end, the person is going back into a place where the primary occupation of that entire area is stuff like gem polishing or something like that. It really, that connect is very difficult. I think, in fact, all of this skill development thing, I'm not too optimistic about it personally because there are too many disconnects. I think it makes more sense for whatever money that is being used by government for skill development, vocational training, etc., if it is instead diverted to industry, and industry just takes in people. It takes in, let's say it has 50 vacancies, it takes in 80 people and tries them out. Industry trains them the same way that Cognizant goes, takes some graduates who don't know anything about computers and literally train them from scratch. They forget their engineering, they forget their MBA, they forget whatever they've learned. They learn from scratch at Cognizant and they get absorbed over there. Maybe not all get absorbed, maybe because all are not good enough. But out of that 80, 50 people, Cognizant is happy, 50 people have got a job, and we haven't wasted a lot of time in providing skills and then trying to find places to keep those people or trying to create jobs which need those people.
But Vaishali, the reason that it's not worked with the Banyan-like organizations is because we focus on working with people who are homeless, who will not remain in our centers for long.
Yeah.
Then they are there for brief periods and then they go back home.
Yeah.
But the skills training centers that we're talking about, which Dr. Parshuraman also spoke of, are centers that will be geography oriented. So it will be across the country, it will be in villages, or that Dr. CRS spoke about, BTCs. And why I feel it works is because these mass training programs have also failed with the Banyan. While skills development of a particular sort has failed, mass training programs have also not worked well. And that's because there is no marriage or no match between one's skills, expectations, one's one's creative pursuits, one's talent, one's expectations, and the skills development. So I feel that it should be a host, and we shouldn't, like Janaki said, say it is 1 to 10, and this is all that we'll do, and it's large industries, and that is where you'll get trained and go. Like all of us, like anybody, if you have a mental health issue, it's no different. You may need some special inputs, but it should be, broken down and smaller is my take. We can add both the recommendations, but I just feel that in our case, anybody who's working and doing well has received a special input, has received special support, has received special training also.
I'm coming to that.
Anu has received special
That
training.
I'm coming to in the
Tiruchelvi has
next
received special training. Ratna's 4 or 5 people that she's talking about special training. All of them.
We're actually not speaking about this from the point of view of just disabled people or people with mental health issues. I'm talking about even otherwise. A heck of a lot of times now you have colleges churning out engineers who nobody wants. There is and there has been a very huge disconnect between what is being provided and what people ultimately need. And a lot of times people will just think, okay, let me go to Delhi and get a job over there, and then you'll have migration on top of it. So where you need people, you don't have people. Where you don't really need people, you have too many people, and that becomes a separate problem altogether.
But
So
that's a different issue.
Yeah, but then what I'm saying is, if that money could instead be diverted to this, in which whatever training you get is on the job.
It's also the type of training, like what she was saying, in terms of, if it translates to employability, then whether it is given, en masse or either way, it doesn't matter. Because if you're teaching somebody to do cane chair kind of a thing, when nobody uses cane chairs these days.
No, but then I am a cane chair making company. I need 50 people to get my job done. So I go and ask for 50 people. Out of that 50 people, I make sure that I have taken this many people who are disabled, that many people who are SC/ST, this many women, this many old people, and I have not discriminated. Now, none of those people know how to make cane chairs. But I get them in and I teach them how to do it. So I am literally training people, but I am training people whom I ultimately need. Instead of somebody else training in some other part of the country, me going and searching for them, bringing them, all of that nonsense. That's basically what I say. Entrepreneurs. Okay, before that, people who have never worked. I don't see anything beyond what already is happening. We have enough models over there. There is where the individualized approach is needed, and that's humongous. I would literally think that in any organization, it would be policy as far as human resources go, because in a lot of cases, it's about giving people opportunities for the first time, and if that's not a job, what is? And secondly, it's about people who might have been able to do something earlier, but for some reason the productivity is not the same. It could be more. I could have been a lowly productive person who suddenly started performing very well. It could be less, and it's my job as human resources to actually identify and see that, okay, the person is no longer a correct fit for that job. So I can't chuck that person out, because by law, and that is the law, I am obliged to find another place for that person within my organization, and as far as possible, a place which he will be happy, I'll be happy, and the work gets done with not too much of loss as far as costing goes.
He switched off.
It's humongous. அவங்க என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, இப்போ வந்து எங்கேயோ ஒரு இடத்துல அவங்களுக்கு பயிற்சி கொடுத்து வேற எங்கேயோ இடத்துல வேலை கொடுக்கும் போது நிறைய பிரச்சனை வருது. பேனிலே கூட நம்ம நிறைய முறை ஒருத்தர் தனிப்பட்ட முறையில திறன் கொடுக்கும் போதோ, கும்பலா பெரிய ஒரு குழுக்கு நமக்கு ட்ரைனிங் கொடுக்கும் போதோ, அவங்க ஊருக்கு போகும்போது அந்த வேலை செயல்பட மாட்டேங்குது. இப்போ அந்த ஏரியால வந்து அந்த திறனுக்கு ஒரு இடமே இல்லை. அப்ப நம்ம இங்க ஏதோ வச்சு இது பண்றது வேலை இல்லை அப்படின்ட்டு. இருந்தாலும் சில இடத்துல நம்ம பார்த்தோம், உங்க கேஸ்லயோ இல்ல அனுவோட கேஸ்ல நல்லா ஒர்க் அவுட் ஆயிருக்கு. ஆனா அதுக்கு அவ்வளவு தூரம் நம்ம எக்ஸ்ட்ரா ஸ்பெஷல் இது பண்ணணும். ஸோ அதுக்கு வைஷ்ணவி மேடம் என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, எங்க வேலை தேவைப்படுதோ அந்த வேலை கொடுக்குற ஓனர், அந்த தொழிலதிபரே வந்து அங்க இத்தனை பேர் எந்தெந்த ஒதுக்கீடு இருக்கோ, என்னென்ன மாதிரி ஆளுங்க வேணுமோ அவங்களை எடுத்துட்டு அவங்களுக்கு அங்கேயே வந்து அவங்க ட்ரைனிங் கொடுக்குற மாதிரி பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னு.
Okay, entrepreneurs, again, that's been covered. NHFDC, getting in the right mix of people, not restricting it to only certain